Hello everyone, this is your friend Uzumkai Universe 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto was reborn as the last Senju heir, and Tsunade left him behind? Part 1. Haterama Senju, that's what my new name is. As far as names went, it was one of the most unimaginative names to give to a boy. Seriously, they had taken Ha from Hashirama and Tu from Tobarama and had bundled the common, Rama, to make it into a name. I rolled it around my mind with both trepidation and a strange sense of ecstasy. I looked up with my baby eyes at my cousin who was gently cooing at me after informing me of my name. While my eyes hadn't developed yet, all I could see was a hazy image of a person above me. I could vaguely guess the identity of my cousin. I am sure most of you would have at least guessed what had happened to me. I was dead and now I was reincarnated in the Narutoverse. I won't bore you with the details about how I died and got reincarnated, because that's not important. What's important was that I was reincarnated as a goddamn Senju. While most of you would complain that it is a great thing to happen, I, for one, don't think so. Yes, I agree that I get to play with chakra, which I would have given my left arm to happen in my earlier life. But, I would have preferred to be born in some obscure clan or even to a civilian. Being a Senju, I tell you from the experiences of someone who had already experienced it before me, is not an easy task. There are so much expectations and even worse, a ton more of responsibilities. My cousin had been dutifully filling in me, or more like ranting to me for the past 2 hours, about what she underwent as a Senju. While I couldn't understand most of the things she said, I could at least guess at the gist of the things. From what I gathered from her, I don't see it as a good thing. It was no wonder my cousin, Tsunade, left the village after her heart was broken. Bloody responsibilities and expectations. Now, don't get me wrong, my cousin was not all sunshine and roses. Nah, Tsunade was a petty little witch. The reason she was telling me about what she had gone through before growing up was to take sick pleasure in telling me what she would make me go through. Apparently, I am the last descendant of Tobarama and the Slug Princess was going to take her revenge on Tobarama through me. But, I digress. I don't know what was running through her mind to rant at a baby like this. I think Tobarama must have given her a hell of a time. It was so bad that she had taken to vent her frustrations about him to a baby. The situation was so hilarious that if I had developed my vocal cords I would have at least let out a chortle to it. Too bad, all I could do was smile at the direction of my cousin. Don't smile at me, Haterama Senju. I am serious. I am going to make you go through all those horrible lessons your grandfather made me go through. Tsunade exclaimed in irritation. You realize that he is not going to understand any of what you are saying, right? A slithery voice sounded from the opposite direction, giving me goosebumps. Yeah, right. The snake bastard was also in the room. Being so close to someone who conducted experiments on children was not a comfortable feeling. Furthermore, I am a Senju. If what I know about this world is right, I am going to be one of the last living members of a famous clan with a Kekkei Genkei. I fervently hope that I didn't inherit Hashirama's bloodline limit. If I did, I wouldn't be safe from the snake bastard. I didn't know at what point in the timeline I was in. I could only vaguely guess at it. Tsunade hasn't left the village yet. So, the second shinobi war must not have happened yet. If the bubbly tone of her was any indication, the events that led to her heartbreak had not happened yet either. But, other than that, I was drawing a blank. Whatever, I was feeling sleepy again. While I wasn't ready to go to sleep when the snake bastard was in the room, my body wasn't cooperating with me. It demanded that I sleep and I reluctantly embraced the one thing I was good at this point in time, sleeping. Days or maybe months, it is very hard to track time if you are a baby even when you have an adult's intelligence, rolled by and I realized that I was wrong in my assumption. Earlier, I had assumed that the second shinobi war was yet to happen. But, I got to know later it was over months before I was born. My first clue was the presence of teenage Shizune. In hindsight, there has been always someone who took care of me. I had assumed it was the Slug Princess. But, Shizune had been a silent presence in my lives for a long time before I even recognized her. The day I realized who she was, the waterworks had flown uncontrollably. What? I am a baby. Do you even know how hard it is to control your body as a baby? Yes, I cried. I cried not for me, but for the terrible heartbreak my cousin had experienced. When I realized Shizune's presence, the only thing I could think of was how hard Tsunade was masking her pain in front of me. And with it came a wave of sorrow that engulfed me that resulted in me crying uncontrollably. With that being said, I would like to take some time to point out here that I wasn't a terrible baby. I tried my best to be a good one. But unfortunately, the only way a baby knows to ask for food or let others know that it had soiled itself was to cry. And no, I am not going to humiliate myself by telling you about the problems I faced because of my lack of strength to do the necessary things like pee by myself. Nevertheless, since that day several questions have been nagging at me. Why was Tsunade still here in Konoha? Shouldn't she be roaming around the land of fire by now? Am I the reason she is still here? Have I tossed Kanon out of the window by my merely existence? While I was grateful that Tsunade had remained behind, I couldn't help but be scared. I could easily imagine the impact of her presence in Konoha during the Third Shinobi War. The possible ramifications of such a game changer like Tsunade being involved in the Third Shinobi War were unimaginable. It would surely throw the entire canon out of the window. At the minimum, Minato would not be the only candidate for being the fourth Hokage. My mind whirled with the idea of Tsunade being the Yondaime Hokage instead of Godaime Hokage. And for several days, all I could think about was the impact of Tsunade's brand of administration to future Konoha. If not much, the medical expertise of Konoha alone will reach an unparalleled amount. Not to say the empowerment of kunoichis. There is no telling what the future now holds. Strangely enough, I wasn't scared of losing the future I know. Not that it promised much. Konoha went through a meat grinder in the original storyline. Maybe with Tsunade's presence, things might get better. Maybe, Minato and Kushina don't need to die. With that comforting thought, I passed the next several days imagining how Naruto's life would be with the presence of parent figures. This is not fair. Screw you, fate. This is not fair at all. The thing I had been dreading most did really come to pass. I imagine that a year hadn't even passed yet after I was born. If the ongoing conversation was any indication, I would even bet my life on the line of that fact. Don't understand, sensei. My cousin was shouting at her sensei Sarutobi Hiruzen. Tsunade. You are being selfish, Hiruzen said in a disappointed tone. Don't you dare use that tone with me. My cousin raged. Not you too. Don't act like Uncle Tobirama. Fine. Then what about Haterama? Hiruzen asked angrily. He will remain here, my cousin stated in a broken tone. You are abandoning him, Hiruzen accused angrily. I am not abandoning him. Tsunade defended herself. I am a broken shell sensei. Haterama deserves better. Haterama deserves his family, Hiruzen bluntly stated, and I could imagine the flinch my cousin would have had at that statement. They are all dead, sensei, Tsunade said in a broken tone that made my heart hitch. I was struggling valiantly to refrain from crying. It was the hardest battle I had battled ever since being born. I knew what my cry would do. It would only postpone this conversation out of my earshot, and I will be damned if I am going to let it happen. Whatever her reason was, I deserved to know. While I could empathize with her situation, it didn't mean that I liked it. Oh, Heim, Hiruzen said softly, and I heard my cousin break down in sobs. Every moment I spend in this compound, in this village, I am reminded of them. Of Natsuki, of Dan, of Uncle Tobirama, of all of them. I can't take it any more, sensei. It is tearing me apart. Haterama is the only reason I am even here. Then, live for him, Heim. No, Tsunade vehemently refused. I will not allow him to grow up seeing my broken shell. He deserves better. He deserves to see the joys of Konoha, not its sorrows. And even if it is the last thing I do as a Senju, I will see it done. Oh Heim, I thought you were getting better. Hiruzen said softly. Overcoming my fear of blood during the childbirth was one thing, sensei. But, this, she let out a dry chuckle that made me sad. I see, Hiruzen murmured. I ask you a favor, sensei. Look after him. Shizune will stay here to look after him, just keep an eye on him. No, I won't. I will be coming with you, Tsunade-sama. Shizune's forceful voice interrupted the conversation. Shizune. Tsunade said in shock at her reply. You need someone to look after you, Tsunade-sama. Don't think I haven't seen the amount of sake you have been drinking, Shizune stated firmly. But, Haterama. Tsunade stuttered. She is right. Shizune will go with you, Hiruzen replied firmly. I can't. Haterama needs. He is a child, Tsunade. You told him you are leaving now so that he doesn't remember you. The same would apply to Shizune. He wouldn't remember her. But, I think that is what is best for all of us. Hiruzen's voice was like a frozen ice. Hearing it, it dawned on me. The reason for Tsunade leaving me. She had lost the will of fire. She had lost the faith on which the village operated. Repeated deaths of close members of her family had shattered her belief. And she didn't want me to lose it either. Hiruzen realized it too, and his disappointment of her stemmed from it. Leave. I will take care of Haterama, Hiruzen stated bluntly, and I felt anger rising up inside me at him. But more than anger, sadness filled me. While I had subconsciously known that it was going to happen, I wasn't prepared for it. Yet, I understood her reason for it. Soon, things were settled and it was decided that I would be looked after by Hiruzen and will be staying in the village. Tsunade hugged my baby body tightly for a long time before she parted. And I reluctantly fell asleep in the ensuing chaos of her departure. So much for changing canon. I once heard a theory that whatever ripples may occur, fate would eventually realign itself to its original course. And it was that moment I decided that it would be better if I kept my knowledge of future to myself. I have read several fanfics where the reborn ones act like oracles and eventually get into trouble for that shit. I wasn't keen on repeating it. A secret shared is not a secret any longer. My first encounter with Danzo was something I wouldn't forget. Why? It was because I never felt so vulnerable in my entire life, the measly 1 year here and the earlier life combined. It happened the next day after Tsunade left. It scared me to shit myself, literally, that the man knew I was alone within a day. Then again, I should be glad that he didn't appear the next hour itself. He is Sensei's blood. The last Senju, Danzo said to Hiruzen in his grating voice that sent shivers through my body. He is a baby, Hiruzen replied softly. Regardless, what have you decided to do with him, Hiruzen? I haven't decided yet. I wouldn't mind looking after Sensei's blood. Hiruzen didn't reply. The silence stretched a long time, at least it felt to me so. I imagined that they were staring daggers at each other. Maybe they were eyeing me. The anticipation of Hiruzen's reply was killing me. After all, it is going to decide my fate. Danzo, Hiruzen said at last in what could barely be called as a whisper. Danzo didn't reply. If he indeed did, it was too soft for me to hear. The boy deserves to walk in the light, Danzo. It could be the last thing we may do for our sensei, Hiruzen replied, causing me to release the breath I was holding in anticipation. Our duty to sensei is to make Konoha stronger. For that he needs to be a root that supports this village, Danzo said without missing a beat. I will not deny him his childhood, Hiruzen stated firmly. You are becoming soft, Hiruzen, Danzo accused. Maybe, Hiruzen replied without missing a beat, and an ensuing silence followed. After what felt like eons to me, Hiruzen spoke. Do you remember first Hokage's dream Danzo? He created this village so that young children like Haterama here need not die. We both have seen how the world was before ninja villages were formed. We may have been too young to truly understand it, but we know what it was like. I think the best repayment we can do for Sensei is to let one of his blood enjoy the labors of pain he went through. I think he would have wanted that. Sensei's legacy is the village. And the village is made up of kids like him. And of all kids in the village, none deserves to enjoy the blessings of the village more than him. His family has given too much to this village. It is time the village repaid his family. Danzo didn't reply. While I should have been glad that Hiruzen was not willing to send me to Root, I can't help but feel for the children that had no one to look after them. So, what are you going to do? Danzo asked once more. I can take him to my home. Bawako has recently raised Asuma. She will know what to do with him, Hiruzen stated. Fine. I agree on one condition. What? Promise me that no harm will come to him, especially from the Uchihas, Danzo asked in a tone that brooked no argument. I have to say that I was shocked to see that Danzo actually cared for me. The shock only lasted for a moment before I scoffed at the notion. No, most probably the bastard was trying to use me as a reason to get at the Uchihas. Uchihas? Hiruzen asked in confusion. He is the last Senju. Danzo stated bluntly before I started to hear the telltale sound of cane tapping the floor which had woken me. I relaxed myself knowing that the danger had passed. He hasn't changed much, I heard Hiruzen mutter before sleep once more took me into its sweet embrace. I was honestly beginning to get amazed with my ability to understand full-fledged conversations. Then again, I shouldn't be surprised. After all, I had been listening to Tsunade rant about Tobirama even before I knew my new name. As I started thinking about it, more and more things stood out in my mind. While my sight and speech were turning out to be a problem, strangely enough my hearing was working fine. Was it because I was mentally an adult? Or is it because of some other thing? Am I affecting my hearing and depending more on it because of the shutdown of my other senses? I didn't know. Regardless, I was glad for it. Soon, days rolled by and I slowly started getting my vision back. Not a clear vision I was used to. It was hazy around the edges and a little blurry. But, I could differentiate between the various shapes. I was also gaining back my motor control. Nothing much, but it felt damn good to move your hands and demands things. Mostly, I demanded food. I was desperately trying to build strength in my small body to get up and go to the loo by myself. As far as reasons went, peeing without humiliating myself was a damn strong motivating factor. Beyond that, I wasn't hoping for much. But that was one thing I refused to be subjected to repeatedly. A man must have his pride. Even when he is in a body of a baby. Sleeping, waking up crying either through a wet bottom or hunger, staring idly at my surroundings even when they are not clearly visible, tolerating the cooing sounds every damn female made at me whenever they saw me, and sleeping again. That was how my days rolled by. I also found much to my amusement that the statement that an idle mind is a devil's playground to be really true. After I had got bored out of my mind by staring at hazy surroundings, I found new vindictive pleasure in making lives hell for whoever was near me. It all started when I realized that my voice box was developing. And I am not ashamed to say I used my developing voice to an alarming degree. My newest way of passing my boredom was to cry out as loud as possible. And dare I say that it drove Bawako through the walls. After all, I had gone from a very quiet baby to someone who was crying loudly each and every waking moment. My bouts of vindictive pleasure would usually last until I would find my throat dry. After that, I would go back to sleep like the little angel I was. And God help Bawako if Orochimaru was in the room. I literally drove him away from the house with my crying. So much so that he stopped visiting when I was awake. Hooray to small successes. And somewhere along the line I started teething. I assure you folks that teething hurts as much as you all would have heard and not remembered. Needless to say, I was crying more often than not, and this time it was not even to my amusement. And you know what the damn idiots gave me to strengthen my teeth on? A damn wooden kunai. I agree that I was in a shinobi household, but it was freaking too much. I went into a stupor of sorts the moment I realized the shape of what I was holding. Playing with chakra aside, I shouldn't forget that I was now in a world where they were training children to be soldiers. It was a resounding reality check in many ways. My mood became subdued for the next few days as I processed what I would have to eventually do to live in this world. I was so out of it that I even failed to recognize that I was in the same room as the snake bastard. And the surprise on his face was priceless to see when he realized I was not sleeping. And as if that was my cue, I started crying, causing his face to twitch in irritation. By the time 7 months old, I was beginning to get enough strength to sit up and wave my arms around. The first thing I did when I got my strength was to try to crawl away with my baby body towards the loo. Needless to say, Bawako was not amused at all. It was at the same time that my eyesight was restored. I may not be able to see objects or faces that were in the distance, but anything within 5 feet of me was fair game, and I promptly put it to use too by memorizing faces and items. I would sometimes stare at symbols or any writings that was in vicinity with increasing frustration for a long time trying to memorize it. While I didn't know what they said, I was amusing myself with memorizing various things. As you would have guessed, it was my new pastime. And unlike my previous one, it didn't irritate Bawako much. With that being said, I didn't abandon using my voice either. I was beginning to use it strategically. I now only cried when I was hungry or had peed myself or someone I didn't like was in the room. Bawako soon started to get the hand of it and would immediately look for the source of my displeasure. It really bewildered her to see me cry every time Orochimaru dropped by. I guess she still thought of him as a darling pupil of her husband. But I knew better. On my first birthday, there was small party in Hiruzen's house. I didn't bother to note who had attended it, except for the most important ones like Danzo and Orochimaru. After all, the noise of a bunch of kids shouting loudly beside me was a good reason to embrace sleep. And sleep I did. Being a baby once more was both a curse and boon. While I wasn't able to attend to my own needs, it also allowed me to go to sleep whenever I pleased. I mean, there was not much to keep my attention anyway. Let me tell you this, being an adult in a baby's body was the most boring thing one can experience. Even if you wanted to do something, you simply can't. But then I was rudely awakened by their prodding. And I gave a stink eye to a chibi Asuma who had done it. He is so cute, one of his friends cooed at me. What the hell, dude? I am giving you all a stink eye and you reply with how cute I am. Damn this baby face. I can't even express my displeasure. Then there is no way to it. You only leave me one option. I cried loudly, causing Bawako to appear out of nowhere and start cooing to me. The flabbergasted expression Asuma wore as he watched me calm down in her hands was too cute though. After all, I had never cried when he was near me before. Well, I think it is time let you guys know of the biggest revelation I had in my short 1 year in Narutoverse. Yes, I am talking about the timeline. And most of you would have guessed by now. Asuma was just shy of turning 3. With that being established, I have a concrete guess as to where in timeline I stood. While I never thought I was in the era of Naruto, and even had an inclination that I was in Kakashi's era, it was good to know where I exactly stood. Speaking of Kakashi, I caught my first glimpse of Kakashi just today. Apparently Sakumo was yet to fail his fated mission and he had made an appearance earlier with a chibi Kakashi. Currently Kakashi was holding his father's hands while he was talking to the elders in Hiruzen. There was no sign of Uchihas though. So, I am yet to get my glimpse on the masked menace called Tobi, or better yet Obito now. Even if the Uchihas were present, I don't think Obito would be present here. After all, he wasn't from Fugaku's family. As I look around the room, all I could do was to let out a heavy sigh. There were both familiar faces and unfamiliar ones. But amongst the crowd there was one face I yearned to see most, and it was conspicuously missing. Tsunade Senju, my cousin and only living relative, was nowhere to be seen. And I think I miss her terribly. I had recently turned 2 and was already beginning to regret it. I mean, who even conducts etiquette lessons for 2-year-olds? It was damn frustrating. And not to mention my teacher for that said subject. I honestly wondered how up my new life could get. Tsunade was right. Being a Senju was not a good thing at all in this world. But to be honest, I brought this all upon me by myself. And if the look of my teacher who was sitting in front of me was anything to go by, I wasn't doing well in the said subject. And let me tell you, Danzo could be scary bastard when he doesn't get what he wants. Yeah, you heard it right. Shimura Ing Danzo was my etiquette teacher. I know it is a concept that is so outlandish that even I was finding it difficult to wrap around my head. After I had behaved very rudely in a formal dinner, Danzo had shown up the next day and introduced himself as my etiquette teacher. I don't know what possessed Hiruzen to even allow it, provided I had been extremely rude to various important personals. Not to mention the fire daimyo himself. What? They were a bunch of assholes who had a foot-long stick up their asses. Who even knew they can't even take a joke? Huh. Though most of the actions were chalked up to be a kid's actions, several of them had expressed their displeasure to Hiruzen and he had promptly caved into Danzo's demand to let him handle the matter. After all, neither Hiruzen nor Bawako could be too strict with me. They adored me completely. In the past year, I have succeeded in completely wrapping up those two in my palms. And as a result, I had become their darling. While I could understand Hiruzen's reasoning, I honestly didn't know why he had agreed on Danzo to be my etiquette teacher. It is not as if people would turn down a request from the Hokage. Seriously, the man had an entire village at his beck and call and he has to saddle me with Danzo. For this reason alone he is not going to get a kiss from me for the next few weeks. It had been almost a week now and my progress was not really up to Danzo's standards. But then, Danzo has been keen to find a mistake in whatever I did. It was as if he is taking this opportunity to mock Hiruzen's upbringing. For all I know that might be true too. But I can't complain much because the man always had a point. Sit straight Haterama. Your posture must not slouch even a little bit. As of now, you are slouching a bit to the left, Danzo drawled as he gravely eyed me. I corrected it. Your right shoulder is slightly higher than your left. I rectified it. It's passable. I was genuinely pleased. Wipe off that silly smile you have. It is unbecoming of a Senju. Even when you don't like someone, you must not let your emotions show. A good shinobi knows to mask his emotions. Your eyes say too much, keep it neutral. Don't shake your legs. Stop playing with your fingers. And it went on. Seriously, I am a kid. What does he really expect me to be? A robot? Well, you get the drift. I have to endure Danzo's torment every day for an hour. And boy, was the man stingy with praises. Even though I know what kind of twisted man Danzo was, it was hard to not get elated by even the smallest of praises from him. Considering that they were so rare. I honestly think that the man was trying to condition me to yearn for his praise. Even when he was torturing me, the man was so skilled in getting things done by people. I have to agree that I started to have a grudging respect for his capabilities, even though I literally hated the very existence of him. Not just him, Bawako had also stepped up her teachings in the past few weeks. We were already done with hiragana and was beginning to step into the minefield called as kanji. It seems Bawako took it personally that I had caused so many complaints to arise from so many important people. As a result, My life was turning into a literal nightmare fully comprised of studies. I so badly wanted to let them know that all work and no play will make Haterama a dull boy. But, one look at her stony gaze quelled any thoughts I would have had on that avenue. Well, enough about the depressing topics. Let's move on to greener pastures. Well, not greener, but anything is good when compared to my nightmare lessons. Asuma has found a new game to play with his friends called the Ninja. And apparently, I was too young to play with them. My foot. So, he had dumped me in favor of the enthusiastic game. As a result, I am now stuck with spending my time with adults mostly. But all is not lost. With Asuma gone mostly, I had the house mostly to myself, and an adult's supervision, and I had taken it upon me to read most of the books the Sarutobis had in their possession, at least what the adults supervising me allowed me to read. It was a win-win situation. My vocabulary was slowly but surely increasing day by day, and I found it a blessing indeed. While I could understand most of what they talk easily, reading something is entirely a different matter altogether. Since English is not the primary language anymore, I thought it to be prudent to learn as much of the language as possible. While I couldn't speak fluently in the language yet, I was prone to butcher the language, much to Danzo and Bawako's irritation. I hoped that I would be able to read fluently very soon. And it was to this effect that I was concentrating most of my efforts too. Asuma, on the other hand, was the more outdoorsy type. He preferred playing to studying, much to Bawako's displeasure. While I too desired to play, me being a Senju curb stomped that into the mud. Apparently, it is fine for a Sarutobi to be not versed in etiquette. But, God help me, a Senju can't have bad etiquette. Hence, I wasn't allowed to play much. The injustice of it rankled me. But, the sweet promise of being literate again and have a fluency in a language had mollified me for now. And despite being a child, my adult mindset thought it was beneath me to throw tantrums like Asuma did when he wasn't allowed to play. So, it was no wonder I was stuck indoors while Asuma was mostly outside. It started happening and I could do nothing but watch it happen. Bawako's frustration with the situation bled over to me unconsciously. Hiruzen started spending more and more time in his duty as a Hokage that he began to neglect his family. And Asuma didn't take it well. Asuma's tantrums during the dinner were now a nightly occurrence. He desperately wanted to spend more time with his father, but Hiruzen was nowhere to be found. Hiruzen usually arrived late to the house well after me and Asuma had gone to sleep. And in the morning he was gone before either of us was awake. While I didn't mind it much, Asuma took it hard. I could see the frustration building up in him as he wanted to spend more time with his father. It was small in the beginning but soon turned into a sticking point for him. Not to mention the very few times Hiruzen was home for dinner he usually discussed important topics with Bawako asking for her input. That left both the kids conveniently unable to understand it. Even though I had an adult mind, it was quite hard to follow up on political things without much background. Initially, Bawako would usually try to steer the conversation away. But, Hiruzen would catch on the fact that she wasn't comfortable with talking sensitive issues in our presence and order us to the bed. And you can imagine how well it would have gone over with Asuma. I mean, all he could understand was that his dad was not spending time with him more. The rare few times Hiruzen spent some time with his family, Asuma had to share him with me. And while Asuma didn't resent me for it, I could see he yearned to have some quality one-on-one time with his Hokage father. Initially, I tried to excuse myself from the duo, only to be held back by Hiruzen. And a 2-year-old's insistence to leave was never held in much weight. So, it is with a heavy heart and a guilty conscience I watched them grow apart. Frustratingly enough, neither me nor Bawako could do much about that either. Soon, the months rolled by and I busied myself in my education. Kanji was admittedly giving me a hard time and my lessons on etiquette with Danzo were now progressed to include history. I started to learn about several of the clans and their unique characteristics from Danzo. Danzo was surprisingly a good teacher. He elaborated on points I felt confused and even helped me understand the various hidden dynamics between the clans. But I refrained myself from asking too many pointed questions to him. It was safe to say I was trudging along the safe waters when it concerned him. Danzo's take on history was so skewed that if I didn't know better I would think that the sun shined out of Konoha's ass. The man was carefully dropping in hints as to not to trust the Uchihas and even went as far as to note that even Konoha has some weeds in its midst that needs to be weeded out. While he phrased them in such a way that I can't call him out on it or complain to Hiruzen, I nevertheless understood his motive. It was scary to think how eager Danzo was to bring me into his mindset. If I was an innocent little boy, I would have easily fallen for that. But I wasn't. So, I carefully acted as if I bought into his ideology and made all the right noises to make him believe that I was hanging on to his every word. It was during one of such lessons that I realized that being a Senju I have to be very careful in the way I interact with people. I couldn't blindly trust someone because there were a lot of people who would love nothing more than influence the lone Senju residing in Konoha. Tsunade was right. Being a Senju was an easy task. And being a Hokage's grandson is even more so. And I could entirely sympathize with her plight. Each lesson with Danzo was a nightmare to me. Having to carefully balance between acting as if looking up to him and not being entirely hoodwinked by his ideals was not an easy task. Needless to say, I dreaded every moment of it. Bawako, on the other hand, had gradually stopped competing with Danzo. I guess she picked up on my dislike for Danzo and was relieved by it. While she didn't say it outright, the tight hugs she gave me every time I finished a lesson with Danzo spoke volumes. And I have to say I was grateful for all the hugs she gave me. Dealing with Danzo always left me feeling a little tainted. And with the amount time I was spending each week, I would have felt my entire being tainted if not for those hugs. Small mercies. Sometime after my 3rd birthday, I had my first run-in with chakra. Unlike how several fanfictions made me believe that chakra was a natural thing in Narutoverse, chakra had its own rules in this world. Every being in Narutoverse possessed chakra. The ones who unlock those things can become shinobi. But unlike chakra coils are entirely different things. The chakra coils are chakra pathways usually developed during the first few years of a baby. A baby's body doesn't automatically possess chakra coils. Rather, the chakra coils develop as the baby matures into a child. Any premature attempt to unlock chakra before the coils were entirely formed would eventually result in malformed chakra coils. When I first learned of this, I began to sweat for I had tried to access my chakra for the past few months. After seeing Asuma begin to train with his chakra, I had secretly tried to access it. Seeing me sweat, Bawako chuckled before beginning to explain how it is very difficult to unlock chakra when the coils are still being formed. 3 years is an ideal time to begin chakra unlocking, and hence Bawako had waited for me to complete 3 years before starting to explain about chakra. I was immensely grateful to her for that. When I had calmed down a bit, Bawako stated my first lesson on chakra. Chakra, as I already know, is present in every living thing. Each and every one of us had unique chakra signature, capacity, and affinity. Some are greatly attuned to their chakra. Some are far less attuned their chakra. Some had large reserves and some had lesser reserves. Clans like Uzumaki, Senju, Sarutobi, Akamichi, and Uchiha had larger reserves of chakra in general. While clans like Nara, Yamanaka, Hyuga, and Inazaka usually had lesser reserves. But that doesn't mean it is set in stone. The capacity of each and every individual differed. So is their control of that said chakra. Those who are attuned to their chakra more had greater control of their chakra, and those who aren't attuned to their chakra more or had lesser chakra control. But these all could be rectified with proper training. But There are unchangeable aspects of each individual's chakra too. For example, one's nature. The Uchihas have greater control towards yin chakra, while the Senjus and Uzumakis of the world had greater control towards the yang chakra. Because those are what they are naturally aligned to. So is the elemental affinity of the chakra. The 5 basic elemental affinity of the chakra is unique to each person, and however one may try, they can't change it. So is the Kekkei Genkei aspect. After lecturing me about the various types of chakra and its nature, she set me on my first chakra exercise. Unlocking the said chakra. The most ideal way to unlock one's chakra is to meditate and feel it on our own. In case of emergencies and extreme situations, an adult can unlock a child's chakra coil. If the chakra is failed to unlock before one hits his teen years, it can't be unlocked at all. I spent a few hours each day trying to unlock my chakra. It wasn't easy either. If I had really been a child, without any preconceptions of how the world worked or some other things an adult's mind is tainted with, it would have been a walk in the park. Unfortunately, I had those said preconceptions on how the world worked and other things, leading me to have a difficult time in unlocking my chakra. After the first week, even Bawako was beginning to get worried. Nevertheless, I persevered in my attempt to unlock my chakra on my own. I could have easily asked Bawako to unlock my chakra. But then again, it had its own drawbacks. Due to the external help, my chakra would always be difficult to control. Poor chakra control is a recipe for disaster for a shinobi. And I didn't want that until there was no other way. There was a reason they only used it in emergencies. Despite the frustrations the task brought me, I kept at it for a few weeks before I finally started to clear my mind out of all the distractions that were clouding me. In my past life, I had heard about the concept called Zen state. It was the only thing I could describe as the state I was in. But the job was only half done. Honestly, after reading all those fanfictions, you would think it would be easy to unlock one's chakra. But the truth could be nowhere close to it. After reaching the Zen state, I tried various methods I had known to unlock my chakra. But all ended in vain. But still, I persevered in my dedication to unlock my chakra. And it paid off after 10 weeks after I had initially begun. It was a beautiful evening in Konoha. Rain was always a special occurrence in Konoha. While we weren't starved for rain like Suna, Konoha didn't get much rain either. But I wasn't enjoying it like I usually did. Asuma had tried to drag me out to play in the rain, but I had refused to be budged from my meditation. Asuma had given me a weird look before rushing outside to get wet in the rain. I slipped back into my Zen state and started to think about various methods to unlock my chakra. But after a while, I realized it wasn't working. Sure, I had some progress with some of the methods, but none of them had unlocked my chakra yet. And it was so damn frustrating. Believe me, 10 weeks of meditation to do a simple task which other kids took only days to do was so darn frustrating. Especially if you had an adult mind. I emptied my mind once more and started thinking of some innovative ways to unlock my chakra. But none came to mind. I could hear the raindrops falling from the nearby window though. The pitter-patter sound they made was beginning to intrude on my concentration. Unable to concentrate further, I let out a huge huff and began my process once more. It had become a common occurrence that it didn't even faze me to go through all those steps again. But the raindrops were not letting me concentrate. This time I wasn't even able to reach the Zen state in the normal way I used to. So, I took a gamble and began concentrating on a particular area from the roof where the rain water was falling from. The constant drip drops soon soothed me and I lost myself in their sound. I don't know how long I held on to that particular sound before my mind began to calm considerably and I entered the Zen state I was usually in, albeit with the sound of the constant drip drop. And then it happened. One moment everything felt normal and the next moment everything became clear. There was a strange sense of rush that usually didn't occur in this state. Accompanying it was a sense of clarity that I have never felt before in either of my lives. It was both calming and energizing. I meditated for more than an hour before opening my eyes. Bawako was looking at me with a huge grin that spoke volumes. I could feel that she was proud of me for persevering until I unlocked the chakra. The hug she gave me was filled with joy and it gave me a strange sense of accomplishment. And I was sure I had a stupid grin on my face at that moment. Well, I had initially thought that Bawako would start teaching me more about chakra once I unlocked it. Unfortunately, it was not the case. Instead, I was introduced to morning katas. Days after unlocking my chakra, I was ushered into the garden along with Asuma. From that day on, we both went through hell. Kata after kata, stance after stance, we were forced to perfect it. I am sure both me and Asuma felt that someone had taken over Bawako and was making us suffer. Strangely enough, that feeling only persisted till we were in training. Inside the house though, Bawako was an angel as always. Both Asuma and I went through taijutsu practice each day in the morning until we could move no longer. There was nothing special about it. We were only learning the basics. But, Bawako expected us to perfect it to an insane degree that left us scarred for life. Sometimes, Hiruzen would pop in and watch us train. Sometimes some other Sarutobi clan members would pop in. Even Danzo popped in to watch us train one day. I distinctly remember my heart beating faster feeling his eyes on me. Bawako never taught us any specialized taijutsu. She was content with teaching us basics. When I asked about it, she gave me a very simplistic answer. Haterama-kun, you are very young. As of now, all you need is to know how to throw a punch and kick. There is nothing more to taijutsu than that. It is all about punches and kicks. All the fancy movements and jumping around doesn't matter. All that matters is your punch or kick connecting with your opponent. Don't complicate things. When you grow up, you can find the style that you are most comfortable with and then combine it to make your personal brand of taijutsu. That is what Academy is for. Until then, you can relax. Strangely enough, I understood her reasoning. She wanted us to be kids a little longer. Before we were inevitably ushered into the shinobi world. And I can't fault her either. As far as she knew, a war had recently ended. She doesn't know that there is another war looming on the horizon, or even worse, shit was going to happen down the line. But, I knew it was going to happen. And I didn't want to be defenseless when it came around. So, I took to my taijutsu practice with fervent dedication that Asuma didn't possess. For him, at this age, it was a boringly monotonous activity. I didn't mind the monotony though. I threw myself into taijutsu like a man possessed. I tried to perform the katas faster. I tried to increase the power of my punches and kicks, and I kept at it for a long time each day. As expected, my dedication paid dividends. Pretty soon, I was far faster than any little kid had any right to be. My reflexes were honed to the level of a genin, and Bawako stated that I would never have to worry about being bested in taijutsu, at least in the academy. So, what do you want? Hiruzen asked us, letting out a thick cloud of smoke from his pipe. I eyed the rack of various weapons that were arrayed before me. Beside me, Asuma was checking it out too. Asuma had recently turned 6 and will be attending the academy tomorrow. To celebrate the occasion, Hiruzen had taken some time off from his Hokage duties and had brought us to a weapons shop. We were each to get one item from the shop. We were allowed to choose though, and if it passes the adult's scrutiny, he was willing to buy it for us. Asuma, as expected, chose a set of brand new kunai. I knew he was pretty hung on becoming a shinobi, and there was no weapon more iconic than a kunai to a young kid. So his choice didn't surprise me. Instead of buying some random thing like Asuma, I eyed the wares displayed critically so that I could buy something useful for me. Haterama-kun, what do you want? Hiruzen asked me after purchasing Asuma's choice. I bit my lips before making up my mind and pointed at a particular object that had been pretty tempting. What's that? I asked the shopkeeper. Oh, this is something new that has come up on the market. These are called chakra weights. You apply some chakra here into this seal and the weight increases to a certain amount. They say it could be used for training purposes. But, I don't know if it is any good though. I mean, they are very new on the market. Bingo. That was actually something I had been searching for. With these chakra weights, I could both increase my speed and power at least double the level. I want them, I said in absolute conviction. Are you sure, Haterama-kun? Hiruzen asked me with concern etched across his face. Yeah, I want it, I nodded my head. Wouldn't you like a set of kunai or shuriken? Hiruzen asked me. No, if you are sure, then give me one of those. Something smaller in size that would suit him. What are you doing, Haterama-kun? Bawako asked me from behind. I lifted my eyes from the object of my interest and looked at her with a sheepish smile. Oh, nothing, I have gotten used to my chakra weights by now. So, I thought that if I could figure out this seal then I can increase the weight without needing to replace the weights, I said, trying to avoid looking into her eyes. Is that so? She had an amused expression on his face. I guiltily looked at the floor, unwilling to meet her eyes. Hiruzen had bought me a chakra weight set as per my wish. I definitely believe that they were new in the market because of how low the market for such things are currently. Also, my chakra weights were different from that of what I had seen in the series. Instead of going around my arms and legs like Lee had, this one was fashioned like a belt. I could definitely understand the logic behind the design, but however it was cumbersome. Though it was designed to increase the total body weight, which is how I preferred by the way, it was ungainly and was a real pain to carry around. Not because of the weight it added. Though it might be a part of the problem, the main problem was the design. Until one got used to being pulled forward or backward every time they bend or stretch, they can't even perform a single kick. I realized how it would be a problem for active shinobi. I think that is why the design was changed later on. Maybe, this is a prototype. But as far as I was concerned, it didn't bother me much as I wasn't performing any active duty or heavy practice. All I was doing was running and practicing basic katas. As a bonus, it also helped me to train in the practice of keeping my balance always. Also, keeping ramrod straight to not fall on your face was helping me to get better in my etiquette classes with Danzo. So, what have you found out? Have you figured it out? She asked me with a kind expression. I huffed in response. It has been 5 days. 5 days. And I still didn't have a clue as to how the seal functioned. It's frustrating. I don't know how it works, I replied, letting her know of my frustration. Maybe, you should ask someone who knows about seals, Bawako suggested gently. I knew that was an option. But, I didn't dare ask for help because with how my luck is I would be saddled with Danzo of all people. I didn't want to meet that creepy bastard more than I have to. Having to spend one dinner per week in his presence was torture enough. Now that Bawako knew, that option might not exist for me. I don't know anyone who knows about seals and I didn't want to trouble Hiruzen-san with this. Do you know about seals? I asked hopefully. No, and there it goes. Hiruzen would be too busy to teach me about fuinjutsu. That means either I will be saddled with Danzo or that creepy snake bastard. But I may know someone who knows about seals, Bawako continued. Tell me, Haterama-kun, do you want to learn about seals? I thought about it for a moment. While I never thought about learning fuinjutsu, it would be a useful skill to have. It was not as if I had anything else occupy me at the moment. With Asuma gone to the academy and finding new friends of his own age, I was mostly left in the home with no one to interact with other than Bawako. All I could hope was that someone Bawako knew was not Orochimaru or Danzo. Yeah, I would like to learn about them. Do you know anyone who could teach me, Bawako-san? I asked a moment later. I will see what I can do, but no promises though, she smiled at me. Later that night, Hiruzen was home for dinner for once and Bawako mentioned my newfound interest in seals. I see, we can arrange someone to teach him the basics, Hiruzen said in reply. Don't ask Orochimaru. The kid can't stand him for some reason. I am not comfortable with him spending more time with Danzo either. Bawako said frostily. Hiruzen grimaced. I will have to ask Jiraiya then, Hiruzen said after a moment of consideration. I was sure my heart skipped a beat at the mention of the arrow Sanin. Jiraiya was one of my favorite characters Kishimoto had created. The man's shenanigans aside, his incredible drive and hard work had impressed me on more than one occasion. I chastised myself for forgetting such a prominent character. No, I will not allow him to corrupt the kid. Bawako refused without any thought, causing me to be disappointed. Find someone else. I will see what I can do, Hiruzen said gravely. The first time I met Kushina was an unexpected surprise. Why? Because it somehow slipped my mind that Kushina and Minato were still alive. While I was regularly meeting Bawako, Hiruzen, Danzo and few of the other characters that were prominent in the series, I had completely forgotten that the Kyuubi attack is yet to happen and in fact, Minato is yet to become Hokage in the past few years here. The older memories of my past life were becoming to get murky as of now. While I could still dredge them up in my mind if the need ever arose, I was conveniently trying to forget my old life and replace those memories with the new one. Well, my old life was anyway, so, nope, not going there. It isn't important anyway. So, let's move on. Kishimoto didn't do justice to Kushina's hair color. Her hair wasn't tomato red. It was even brighter and in the face red. I don't have a proper analogy to describe the correct effect those famous hairs posed. I think it would suffice to say it was both disturbing and alluring in a unique kind of way. When I had dredged in from my morning practice of katas a few days after the conversation with Hiruzen, I saw Kushina chatting with Bawako. I am not ashamed to say I took a double take seeing her chatting with Bawako happily. Seeing me looking at her in open-mouthed wonder, Bawako motioned for me to come closer. I closed my mouth and hastily got over my surprise and walked closer to them. Haterama-kun, this is Kushina-san. She will be teaching you about seals. Bawako introduced Kushina to me. Hello, Kushina-san. It is nice to meet you. I am Haterama Senju. Please take care of me, I said, bowing to Kushina a little awkwardly. I still haven't gotten used to bowing to people whom I meet for the first time. I had to keep my itching hands from extending for a handshake. Danzo drilled me about this for more than a week before I could even consciously restrain my hands from reaching out on their own. Apparently, it is considered rude to extend hands to unknown people. Whatever. Kushina eyed me critically for a moment in which I wiggled awkwardly. I wondered what would happen if she didn't like me. After all, Kushina was one of the most dangerous women in Konoha at the moment. Not to mention she is a bit hot-tempered. As I realized my predicament, I inwardly gulped, wondering what have I gotten myself into. He is so cute, Kushina gushed, throwing me completely off track. Without pausing, she lifted me like the child I am and swung me around, all the while laughing. For my part, I eyed her in bewilderment. Here I was behaving awkwardly because I couldn't offer a handshake and bow instead just because it is considered rude. And this woman was breaking all social conventions Danzo has drilled into me for the past 2 years. Oh dear, this is surely going to be a hell of a time. I vaguely remembered that I hated meeting overly friendly in my past life. Bawako chuckled from her seat, causing me to turn and look at her. She smiled at me as Kushina spoke to her. Bawako-san, you didn't tell me he was this cute. I thought he would be all grumpy like Tsunade-san. Immediately the room plunged into a dark mood as Bawako's smile evaporated. Tsunade's name was a sore topic in the household. Despite Bawako's amazing care for me, I still yearned to meet Tsunade. So much so that I would always ask for Tsunade on every special occasion. I desperately hoped that she came to at least visit me. While I only asked Bawako or Hiruzen, that too only once, they soon got to know that I was yearning to see my last living relative. Even my good mood evaporated after Kushina's statement. Realizing that something was up as both Bawako's and my smile disappeared, Kushina stared around the room looking for something else that would have caused it. Unfortunately, she didn't find any. What did I say? She asked nervously as she put me down. Please don't talk about Tsunade in front of the kid, Kushina, Bawako whispered. Kushina looked down at me, who was understandably grumpy now, in understanding. I didn't bother to reply. I merely huffed and went to the loo to freshen myself up. When I returned, the atmosphere was still awkward. From Kushina's body language, it became apparent to me that Kushina has been updated about my pining for Tsunade. My first lesson in Fuinjutsu began soon after that without any delay. Fuinjutsu, or the art of sealing, was something unique and apart from the norm of normal chakra theory. While the basics of both are born from chakra and its applications, Fuinjutsu was a whole different beast. When it came to Fuinjutsu, you either had it or not. There is no two-way about it. You can't half-ass it either. You either understood how the seals worked or you didn't. If you can't understand how the seals worked and how the chakra pathways are built in it, then you had no hope of understanding Fuinjutsu regardless of how much ever effort you put into it. And in order to understand Fuinjutsu, you had to have lateral thinking capabilities. You can be a genius or a natural in weapons handling or a born taijutsu specialist or any other thing in the world, but when it came to Fuinjutsu, you must have the capability to understand some murky concepts and have to think out of the box. When Kushina explained to be about seals, my first thought was that it was akin to a human body, or even better, a circuit diagram. It had chakra pathways and gates that were akin to a human's body, and the design itself was like a circuit diagram. A circuit diagram may look rubbish to an outsider, but to someone who understands it, it is pretty simple. Seals combined these two elements together. While the design of a seal was like a circuit diagram, behind that outline it acted like a human body. Each seal was designed for a specific purpose, and the seal can only be used for that specific purpose. As you might have guessed, I got a good understanding of seals. I wouldn't say that I took to it like a duck to water, but it would be safe to say that I didn't have much trouble in understanding the convoluted maze that was called Fuinjutsu. It took weeks for Kushina to lay the groundwork for me in Fuinjutsu. Sometimes it was frustrating, sometimes it was exhilarating, like learning something out of ordinary, and sometimes it was dull and monotonous. Like now. The most boring part about Fuinjutsu is the part where you have to perfect etching out what you want to accomplish. Currently, I was sketching out standard explosive designs and Kushina was grading it with a critical eye. You don't just whip your brush and get the design right. The calligraphy shit it requires was driving me crazy. Each brush stroke must have an ideal amount of ink and there must not be even slight deviations. Even a small twitch of a hand was considered deviation. No wonder I was beginning to hate it. If you think it is just an explosive note, then I will explain to you why it needs to be so precise. A standard explosive note had a common design. But, you could either increase the power of explosion or decrease it by adding some modification into the said design. The same could be done for the radius of the explosion and whatnot. I think you get the gist. But, the biggest hurdle in that is that you need to know what the heck each and every part of the design does. If you don't, then forget about altering the seal, you couldn't even replicate it. A small mishap will make the explosive note a dud, or even worse, backfire on the one using it. You have to know which part powers the explosion, which one acts as the timer, which one determines the power in the explosion, which one determines the size of the explosion, and a lot more other things. This is just for a simple explosive note. Imagine what other kinds of components would be included in sealing up a biju or creating a space-time effect like Flying Thunder God Jutsu. Needless to say, it is one hell of a task to learn even the Fuinjutsu basics. That is why Fuinjutsu masters are so rare. But it is not a thankless job either. If you become a fuinjutsu master, you can create your own personalized seals. With personalized seals, you don't even have the need for ninjutsu. Seals can do that job for you. Personalized seals are a very scary thing indeed. You can even rig a normal trap with your personalized explosive notes. If someone tries to disable it the normal way, then they go boom. Because there is no limitation when it comes to fuinjutsu. All it requires is for you to envision it and create a seal that will act it out and apply it. The first advice Kushina gave me and stressed me to remember at all costs is that never to engage a fuinjutsu master on his terms. You don't know what the hell he had brewed up in his seals. That makes it hard to counter. The safe way to eliminate a fuinjutsu master is to catch him off guard and eliminate him quickly. It was a sane advice. A vague memory of Itachi disengaging from Jiraiya even though he had Kisame for backup surfaced in my mind. And I decided to remember it at all times. Oh, there goes my fantasy of raiding Danzo's root locations when I was strong enough. I knew for a fact that the bastard was more than decent when it came to sealing. If not anything, his scary seal that he has implanted on all his minions was a prime example of his fuinjutsu prowess. My lessons in fuinjutsu slowly bore fruit and I began to slowly but surely become proficient in sketching out a seal. When Kushina volunteered to change the seal on my chakra weights, I refused and told her that it will be a good incentive for me to learn fuinjutsu faster. The smile she gave me at that reply sent shivers down my spine whenever I remembered it for the rest of my life. It took 4 months, 4 long months, for me to change the seal on my chakra weights. And when it was done, I had a shit-eating grin on my face for the rest of the day. And Kushina took me to one of the famous landmarks in Konoha for celebration. Yup, you guessed it, Ichiraku's ramen. The taste of the ramen was as delicious as all the hype about it was. But sadly enough, I understood that I will never become a ramen-crazed person like Kushina or Naruto. While I may enjoy its taste, it wasn't spellbinding either. And when we were walking back from the shop after Kushina has eaten around 6 to 7 bowls of ramen and had the audacity to call it a small snack, Kushina asked me something that she had always wanted to ask. Heitorama-kun, why are you so eager to meet Tsunade-san? I thought about ignoring the question altogether, but Kushina had been so nice to me and I didn't want to be rude. Moreover, neither Bawako nor Hiruzen asked me why I yearned to see her. I didn't answer immediately. I walked for a few minutes without answering and strangely enough, Kushina didn't push. Why did I want to meet Tsunade so much? Is it because she is also a Senju? No, it was because the woman tried to mask her sorrow for me even though I shouldn't be able to recognize it. She left the only family she had, after losing all her loved ones, just because she didn't want me to be influenced by her misery while growing up. That needed a strong heart and unconditional love for me. But, I was not supposed to know any of this. Then, how can I explain my longing for her? I mulled about it for a few minutes before answering. Because she is my Nei-san, I said to her in a soft voice that conveyed my love for her. Oh Heitorama-kun, Kushina lifted me up and planted a kiss on my cheek. You can call me Nei-san if you want. I won't mind, Kushina said to me. I only smiled at her in reply. I can call you sure, but you would never ever replace her in my mind. I thought to myself wistfully. I soon realized 2 things about Kushina. 1. She is crazy for both ramen and seals. I think it is an Uzumaki thing. Her love for ramen is obviously inherited by Naruto. As the series didn't showcase any other Uzumakis that much, I could safely say that. On the other hand, seals are what they became known for. So, neither didn't faze me much. But the second thing I realized about Kushina is that she had no concept of social restrictions. She did what she wanted when she wanted. Social concerns and peer pressure be damned. Danzo constantly questioned me on social etiquettes after learning that I was spending time with Kushina. I think he was afraid that she will undo all the social etiquettes that were drilled into me for 2 years. And just for that fact alone, I loved hanging out with Kushina. While I was with her, I was not a Senju. One of the members of the fabled clan which co-founded Konoha. I was just Haterama, a 4-year-old kid. She gave me space to be myself. Even Bawako had some expectations from me. On the other hand, Kushina didn't expect anything from me. I was grateful that she didn't stereotype me and place undue expectations on me. To her, I was just a kid and I was thankful for that. But my 4th year in the world of Naruto wasn't a smooth sailing ship either. Midway through my 4th year, I was brought back to reality in a nasty way. Tsukumo's fateful mission occurred. When I heard about it, I was both shocked and relieved. Shocked because I had forgotten what this world entailed and was going on with my life as a happy child. While my thought process was that of an adult, I had conveniently embraced the kid aspect of this new life and was even enjoying it. My relief came from the fact that I was just a kid and nothing I did could change Tsukumo's condition. Also, a tiny part of me was relieved to note that the events were transpiring as it did in the original timeline despite my inclusion. Yeah, it's a shameful thought, I agree. But you have to understand that I had never gotten a concrete evidence that my presence hadn't changed anything. Tsunade's departure was both born of her sorrow and love for me. Asuma falling out with his father was the only logical conclusion, noting that Hiruzen was the Hokage and had his duties. Even my suspicions on Danzo and Orochimaru were just that, mine and mine alone. None of that had assuaged me that everything was as it is in the series. But, the Tsukumo incident was a different thing. It would need an extraordinary amount of coincidences to occur one by one to create it. The simplest explanation was that everything was as it is in the original series, except for my inclusion. It was both frightening and relieving at the same time. If the events stayed its course, then I would have to face a world war, 2 invasions, a Biju attack, and eventually all the shit will hit the fan when the last world war occurs in something akin to humanity versus aliens. It also made me think if I was going to do anything about it. Sure, it would sound cool to interfere and make things right. But, I am a strong believer of the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Going up and blindly messing with the timeline was not my thing. That way I wouldn't even be aware of the ripple effects it causes. What if my interference changes the final outcome for the worst? At least, Naruto and Sasuke defeat the moon bitch in the original timeline. Now that I had a new lease on life, should I squander it by simply messing up the original timeline? What if I get offed for my interference in the middle and the final outcome becomes terribly wrong? Wouldn't it be my fault? Then again, would I even have the power to change things? I remembered watching the final war and feeling most of the characters in the series were being useless regardless of their skills. Only S-rank shinobi and people protected with plot armor were even able to stand a chance. Even that wasn't a big one. What could little old me do? What did I have? Will the name Senju alone would be enough to change things? Nope. It was so confusing. I decided to open the Pandora box when it actually affects me and let the issue rest for now. I also decided that my first focus should be on getting strong. Not just strong, but S-rank strong. I remembered Kakashi being handed his butt far too many times, despite being on par with S-rank shinobis. Until I had the capability to challenge S-rank shinobi, I had no business in interfering with the timeline. No matter what people thought, that would be plain stupidity. Change just for the sake of change would ultimately result in deep shit. As of now, things were going to be fine in the end. Until I become strong enough, I shouldn't mess with it. That decision spurred me on to increase the intensity of my morning training. I started running a whole lap around the village in the morning before my morning katas. I avoided the early hours because so many people used that hour for their training. Instead, I waited till Asuma went to the academy to start with my training. It went without a hitch for the first few days. But it didn't last for long. On one such lap, a creeping suspicion came upon me. The spot behind my neck started itching and it felt as if someone was following me during my morning lap. I immediately curbed my urge to turn around and look. Instead, I increased my speed a little, hoping to shake off that feeling. But it didn't go away. After running for about halfway, I took a breather and stealthily tried to locate the presence. No such luck. Even though it annoyed me that someone was following me, I couldn't do anything about it. Instead, I did the only thing I could do. I completed the remaining portion of my lap in high speed. All the way to the house, I could feel their stare on the back of my head. That night, after dinner, I took Hiruzen alone to the garden and informed him of the presence. He looked at me skeptically before asking me to inform if I felt such feeling tomorrow. I nodded to him in acceptance. There is no use in creating a fuss if there wasn't any repeat of the incident. If there is a repeat, then I would definitely have to be worried. Have Orochimaru started experimenting on children? Was Danzo fed up with my progress and wants to go back on his word to Hiruzen? I wouldn't put it past the man to do something like that, claiming that it was for the future of the village. Still, they wouldn't be stupid enough to kidnap the only Senju alive. I hoped, because that would create quite a stir in the village and draw unwanted attention. Neither of them would want that. So, the next morning I did my training lap as usual, and pretty soon the feeling of being stared at returned. This time I didn't rush or take a break. I completed my lap in a calm, collected manner. The feeling persisted until I entered the house. And then, suddenly it was gone. I dutifully informed Hiruzen about it. Hiruzen thought about it for a while before asking me to wait and going into his room. He returned with a small sheet of paper in his hand and asked me to inject some chakra into it. Once I injected some chakra, it glowed blue. He carefully tore it into 2 pieces and performed some hand seals on either of them. Now, both papers had identical markings and he gave one to me. Haterama-kun, take this sheet of paper with you when you go for your morning run. If you are in any danger, tear this paper. I will both know that you are in danger and your location. I will come as fast as I can to rescue you. Do you understand? He asked me in a soft voice. A normal guardian would have asked me to conduct my training indoors or even appointed someone to find out who is following me. Not Hiruzen though. Damn shinobis. Nevertheless, I was grateful that my privilege to run laps across the village wasn't revoked. I nodded my understanding and pocketed the note. Hiruzen gave me a reassuring smile and ushered me into the house. The next day, I went about my training as usual and felt someone following me all the way through my lap. It happened on the following days as well. The note from Hiruzen gave me the confidence to deal with the situation. But, nevertheless, the feeling of being stared at began to annoy me soon. So, I added an extra bit of training to my morning run. The task was to identify the sounds my shadow made or spot his location without stopping my lap. The first few days were futile as I tried desperately to ascertain the location of my stalker. Whoever was following me was a trained shinobi. They knew how to keep track of me without showing their presence to me even once. The situation began to frustrate me more and more, and soon I was itching to know the location of my stalker as I maintained my morning lap. I tried listening, sneakily looking behind, altering my speed in the hope of catching them off guard and whatever came to my mind. None of it bore any fruit. The frustration began to mount and I was almost on the verge of giving it up as a lost cause just to save some mental anxiety when something happened. One day, after a few weeks of the initial event, I felt a strange feeling as if someone was watching me from the top of the tree 20 yards behind me. It was so sudden that I stopped running altogether. The feeling didn't go away the moment I stopped running either. It only intensified. Without giving any indication, I sprinted fast and I felt something move through the air after me, still keeping the same 20 yards distance from me. I felt elated and started to divide my concentration in both sensing the person and running my lap. By the time I finished my lap, I was certain that the person I had sensed was my stalker. Whoever he was, his location kept changing either in distance or in position in relation to me. He maintained roughly around 20 to 30 yards of distance between him and me. Once I latched onto his presence, it became easy to identify him. And I was pretty sure it was a him and not her. Soon, it became a routine of sorts for me to sense his location while I was running my lap. It looked like I had inherited Tobirama's sensing abilities. While I didn't inform about my new ability to anyone, I diligently used my stalker as a training dummy to enhance it. I can't say that I was as awesome as Tobirama either. My abilities only extended to 20 to 30 feet, and that too only because I know I was being stalked. The other occasions I tried to use my ability to sense the presence of people in the distance invariably turned up empty. I wasn't disheartened. It only made me dig my heels in and hone my new ability. In the series, sensors were mostly used as cannon fodder. Apart from cage-level shinobis, none of the sensors had any prominent role to play. In my opinion, it was one of the most underused abilities in the series. Seriously, a person who can sense others approaching him would be far harder to get the drop on than a normal shinobi. Not to mention, sensing can even discern the natural affinity of someone without even exchanging ninjutsu. Oh, the possibilities this gives me. I was glad that this new ability of mine was right up my alley. I can't wait to hone it into a level of art. I recently turned 6 and as it is proper, at least for a Senju, I will be attending the academy. There were no questions asked regarding whether I wanted to attend the academy or not. Decisions had been made for me without even my consultation. Not that I would have been against it if the choice was presented. It was just the principle of the matter. I was a little miffed about that. But I wasn't blaming Hiruzen or Bawako. After all, I had been instructed in Fuinjutsu and Taijutsu, however limited it may be. Visual art and design. As for me being a censor, I hadn't divulged that information to anyone else. It was my little secret weapon. I had no intentions to lose that edge. As for my stalkers, over the course of the year, they had become less prevalent. It didn't stop altogether, but nowadays the appearances were random. I didn't complain as it provided me ample opportunity to hone my sensing skills. My Fuinjutsu and Taijutsu lessons came to a standstill after I turned 5. For the past year, I have only been assigned reading materials on Fuinjutsu to keep that from becoming rusty. My Taijutsu, on the other hand, was good enough to easily breeze through the academy without any competition. I could easily defeat Asuma when it came to Taijutsu even with my weights. I wouldn't call that an accomplishment either, because Asuma has been recently so distracted with his crush over Kurenai. When I first came to know about it, it took me by surprise. While I knew they both were an item in the series, I had thought that they fell for each other once both had become Junin or something like that. But, from the looks of it, Asuma always had the hots for her. Let's keep those muddling thoughts of mine aside for now. Because I will be starting the academy today and I was itching to go there. I had always had a keen interest or a partial favor for the academy in my mind. It was where it all began in my mind. So, attending the same school where the story began was giving me a head rush. Early in the morning I woke up and did my routine training regimen before rushing back inside to prepare for my first day. By now, my training routine has become somewhat familiar to me and it felt like I was missing out on something if I didn't perform it even for a single day. While my routine remained the same, I had increased the difficulty of my training regimen to harsh standards. With my knowledge of seals, it was easy to increase the weight of my chakra weights and keep challenging me on a daily basis. Bawako offered to take me and Asuma to the academy on my first day. Strangely enough, Asuma refused to accept that offer and headed out of the home early. It was disappointing to me to see Asuma acting like that. I had thought we could hang out together during breaks in the academy. But from the looks of it, it was clear to me that Asuma didn't want to associate himself with me. While I could understand that he was distancing himself from the younger kid, hey, no one wanted to stick with their younger sibling when their friends were around, especially if girls were involved. It didn't mean I liked it. My disappointment must have shown on my face because Bawako gave me a tight hug. I returned the hug gladly and we both stepped out of the house to go to the academy. Anime and manga. On our way to the academy, Bawako was greeted by several villagers. She returned their greetings with warm smiles and genial words. Soon, we reached the entrance of the academy and a lot of parents were milling around the gate waiting to see their kids off. There was a chunin waiting for the new joinees at the gate and Bawako handed me over to him with a warm smile. I could see the chunin struggling to maintain the nervousness he felt in front of Hokage's wife and I inwardly smiled at this. But, what I didn't like though was the way he treated me after that. I think, the Hokage's wife dropping me off at school must have made me an important person in his eyes and he was beginning to be overly polite to me. I just hope that none of the teachers acted like him. If the jealous looks I was getting from my fellow students were any indication, that was not going to go well. We were all ushered into a large hall that I dubbed it as an auditorium for the Hokage's welcome speech. Once we were all inside, immediately cliques began to form among the students. I noted with strange fascination that the way the cliques were formed gave away the current political climate of Konoha. The kids from Yamanaka, Nara and Akimichi clan all banded together. Same went for the kids from Inazaka and Aburame clan. That was an odd combination, with kids from Inazaka clan being brash and loud and the other half of that clique being aloof and distant. Several of the minor clan kids formed a clique of their own. The civilian kids also formed their own clique. That left the Hyugas and Uchihas to stand on either side of the room and glare at each other. It was fascinating in itself. I looked around for a minute trying to figure out which clique I fit in before giving it up in favor of watching the Inazaka clan members and their ninkins. They made a cute combination, if I have to say myself. Not long after that, Hiruzen walked in with his Hokage robes gleaming in the dim lighting that was provided in the auditorium. He was dressed formally in his hat, robes and all other formal accessories. The ever-present pipe on his mouth was strangely absent. He welcomed us to the academy and started off a speech professing the will of fire and all the other propaganda materials to entice the kids. I could practically feel the positive energy buzzing out of the kids when he concluded his speech. He concluded his speech by expressing his hopes that we all will become a splendid genin and become the backbone of Konoha. If I have to go by the resounding applause that came at the end of this speech, I would say that he got all of the kids' hook, line, and sinker. Even knowing that it was thinly veiled indoctrination speech, I can't help but share the excitement others felt in the room. Soon after Hiruzen's departure, we were split into 5 classes and sent to our respective classes. When my name was called, hushed whispers and mutterings floated through the hall which made me feel strangely uncomfortable. I could practically feel all the eyes of the remaining students in the hall on me, especially the Uchihas. I was assigned to the B section of the first year along with several of the clan kids and few civilian kids. From the looks of it, I figured it to be class on which the teachers will focus more considering the number of clan kids in our class. In the same vein, I figured that the civilians assigned to my class were either too low of a rank or too high. Soon, we were ushered into our new classroom and I hastened to pick a convenient seat by the window. Don't get me wrong, I was really excited to attend the academy. However, I wasn't delusional to think that the academy could pose me any challenges. Sure, Some of the curriculum may provide a bit of a trouble, but nothing seriously challenging was going to be thrown my way. But I had plans for that. I wasn't going to waste the time I spent in the academy. Instead, I was going to increase my chakra sensing skills using the other kids as training dummies. A group of kids who had only recently unlocked their chakra and had absolutely no idea on how to hide it from a sensor. Please, this was a goldmine of an opportunity for me to hone my skills in the sensing department. Career resources and planning. And like hell, if I am not going to abuse it. Hello, Senju-sama. My name is Inobu Yamanaka. Nice to meet you. I am sure we can be best of friends. Senju-sama, I am Kiriko. I would be honored to be your friend. Senju-sama, I am. Senju-sama, my name is. Senju-sama, what's your favorite dish? Senju-sama, what's your favorite color? Senju-sama, Senju-sama. By the time the first month of the academy ended, a small twitch was beginning to form in my eyes every time someone said Senju-sama. Seriously, I get it that Senju was one of the founding clans of Konoha. But the number of people trying to cozy up to me was beginning to unnerve me. I couldn't fault them either. They were just kids. But, on the other hand, I felt like kicking the living daylights out of the adults who were trying to cozy up to me, even the teachers. Given that any 6-year-old kid would have reveled in the amount of attention that was shown towards me. But I was not a little kid though. I had the mentality of an adult and it was frustrating to see the number of people that were trying to cozy up to me. I have to be honest here, it even began to scare me a little. If I was a little kid, with the amount of attention that was being given to me, I would have surely turned out to be a schoolyard bully sooner than later. That much attention could do nothing but spoil a kid. Luckily, I wasn't a kid. In the eyes of the teachers, I could do no wrong. With 2 Hokages in my lineage and the third one being my guardian, I was on the fast track to becoming the most popular kid in the entire academy. I was so glad that Asuma was avoiding me. If even his friends had tried to cozy up to me, I would have surely lost my mind. Oh, did I forget to mention that the high-strung Uchihas were surely pissed? From what I gathered from the bits and pieces I managed to overhear, normally the Uchihas would be receiving this esteemed treatment. But, not in this case. Being the lone Senju that was residing in Konoha, I was the must-have friend in the academy at the moment. And didn't the Uchihas love it? I could feel their burning glare at the back of my head every time someone tried to cozy up to me. Luckily, I hadn't attracted any crazy fangirls. There were enough Hyugas and Uchihas in our year to attract them. For the first time in my new life, I was glad for the severe visage I had inherited from my grandfather. Not to mention the silver, mangy hair detracted most of the female population of my class. It seemed as if I wasn't as desirable as the aloof Uchihas with their breathtaking beauty or aristocratic Hyugas with their pupil-less eyes. Thanked Kami for small mercies. My enthusiasm for attending the academy was now turned into a grudging acceptance of my situation. Even the pleasant seat I had picked out for my convenience was not enough to raise my mood, for the seat near it had become a hotspot for contention among my fellow classmates. But all was not lost though. I have a plan to get out of this mess. During the latter half of the month, I had tried my initial plan to partial success. All now I have to do is to cement the impression I had created in the first month. After the start of the second week, I started to purposefully make myself appear as a dumb person. Added with my refusal to rise to any taunts the Uchihas in the class made, I was painting a pretty bleak picture of myself in others' eyes. All in all, I was going for a cowardly look with a touch of dumbness added in. While most of the kids bought my act by now, with the exception of those scary Naras, anyway, I wasn't worried about them. It would be too troublesome for them to rip off my facade. The teachers were a whole different breed. Despite my dumb outlook, they were still favoring me because I was a descendant of the first and second Hokage and under the care of the third Hokage. So, I had planned something special to get on their bad side. Education. I initially thought of pulling pranks like Naruto, but then decided against it. People hated Naruto's pranks because of the whole demon thing he had going, and they refused to acknowledge the ingenuity of his pranks because of that. If I did something like that, it would completely backfire on me. Instead of being shunned, I would be lauded as a trap specialist in the making. No, that could absolutely not happen. Instead, I was planning to pull a Kakashi on them. Yup, you guessed it right. The current Kakashi was now a stuck-up prick. I heard that he had been already made a genin and being mentored under Minato. So, I am going to steal the Scarecrow's gimmick. It was as simple as that. I had the original owner of the gimmick as my competition though. But, I was not worried about it. Obito may be the originator of the gimmick, but Kakashi had perfected it to irritate people. And I was going to steal that. The first step of my plan was commencing today. Exactly 1 month after the academy began. By my estimate, the classes must have begun by now and the teacher must have noticed my absence. But, I wasn't rushing. Instead, I was calmly looking at the village from one of my favorite spots, the Hokage Mountain. I looked at the bustling village that was laid out before my eyes and watched the people go about their lives calmly. From what I can see from here, the stigma of the Uchihas was yet to catch and all was well in the village. While I might have overheard Hiruzen talking about the tension in the border to Bawako, it was nothing unexpected to me. Deeming that enough time had passed for me to begin my new act, I got up and rushed to the academy. Just when I was about to enter into the academy, someone came barreling into me and I narrowly escaped falling down. Supremely annoyed at the intrusion, I turned around to see my attacker, only to find someone rushing past me into the academy. I stood there for few moments and gaped at the distinctive blur of the Uchiha rushing into the academy. It was Obito all right. Those awfully bright goggles and distinctive Uchiha hair confirmed me of it. I felt my heart beat faster watching him clumsily run towards the academy. And God, wasn't he clumsy. I struggled to imagine the clumsy boy barreling past me into the academy as the one who was going to single-handedly start a war with all the elemental nations. I stood there gaping for a minute before a smirk emerged on my face. This was my first day and I was already beating the originator in his own game. Giddy with happiness, I slowly ambled into the academy towards my class. As I entered the class full 15 minutes late, drinking in the stupefied expressions of my entire class and teacher, a strange sense of accomplishment rushed through me. I walked directly to my seat and parked my ass, trying hard to keep from smiling. That was when the teacher did me the ultimate favor. Haterama-kun, do you have a reason for coming late to the class? Did I? Oh, poor bastard. You don't even know how screwed you are. Sorry sensei, I got lost on the road of life. The gobsmacked expression he gave me was priceless. Well, I see why Kakashi messed with people with his laziness. Surely, this was more fun than I could have imagined. Looks like I am going to enjoy this immensely.